Ah, welcome back, you beautiful legal anomalies, you courtroom mysteries, you cases they wish they'd never opened. Welcome back to the ones who walked into that hearing room and made the entire system malfunction. Yeah, you heard that right. The judge, that stone-faced authority figure who's seen it all, who's supposed to be unshakable, who's presided over thousands of cases without blinking. He looked at your file, looked at you, and whispered something he's never said in 30 years on the bench. Holy sh times T. And then, my friend, then he did something even more unprecedented. He stepped down. Not retired, not took a break. Stepped down from your case specifically. Do you understand what that means? Do you comprehend the level of reality-bending chaos you just caused in a system designed to be unmovable? In a structure built on predictability? In a machine that processes human lives like paperwork? You broke the judge. You shattered the arbitrator. You made the man who decides fates question his own. Let's rewind this beautiful disaster, shall we? They thought they had you figured out, didn't they? They opened your file expecting another routine case, another standard hearing, another predictable outcome. Prosecutors came prepared with their rehearsed arguments, character witnesses lined up with their scripted testimonies, evidence neatly organized in manila folders. Everyone in that courtroom had their role memorized. Everyone knew their lines. Everyone expected you to play the part they'd written for you. But then you walked in, and something in the air shifted. Something in the energy changed. Something in the fundamental fabric of that courtroom started glitching. The judge noticed it first. That's why he kept staring at you, kept glancing at his notes, kept looking back at you like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. Because you weren't nervous. You weren't apologetic. You weren't performing the expected emotional theater. You walked in with the kind of calm that makes people uncomfortable, the kind of silence that screams louder than any defense, the kind of presence that forces everyone to reconsider what they think they know. They started presenting their case against you, building their narrative brick by brick, painting you as the villain they needed you to be. But with every accusation, something strange happened, something none of them anticipated, something that made the judge's eyes narrow with increasing confusion. Their story wasn't adding up, not because the facts were wrong, but because you, sitting there in flesh and bone, contradicted the monster they were trying to create. Every time they described your actions, your choices, your supposed crimes, the judge would look at you, and something in him started breaking, started questioning, started realizing that maybe, just maybe, he's not looking at a criminal but at something else entirely. Was it the way you maintained eye contact without aggression? Was it the way your silence spoke volumes their words couldn't match? Was it the way you carried yourself like someone who'd already been through worse than anything this courtroom could deliver? Whatever it was working, and the judge felt it in his bones. Now here's where it gets really interesting, really beautiful, really poetic. Halfway through the hearing, the judge did something unprecedented, something lawyers will talk about for years, something that'll become urban legend in legal circles. He asked for a recess. Not the standard 15-minute break, but an immediate, urgent, get me out of this room now recess. People in the gallery exchanged confused glances. The prosecution looked annoyed. Your legal team looked hopeful but bewildered. And you just sat there, knowing exactly what was happening, because you'd seen this before, hadn't you? You'd watched people realize in real time that they misjudged you, that they underestimated you, that they tried to fit you into a box that was never designed to contain someone like you. The judge went back to his chambers. And here's what nobody tells you about these moments. Here's what happened behind those closed doors that made everything change. He didn't just review the evidence again. He didn't just reread testimonies. He sat there and had what we'll call an existential crisis in legal robes. He started seeing things he'd missed before, connections he'd overlooked, patterns that revealed a completely different story. Your case wasn't just about guilt or innocence anymore. It became about something bigger, something that challenged his entire understanding of justice, of truth, of the system he'd served faithfully for decades. And that's when he whispered it, sitting alone in that chamber with decades of certainty crumbling around him. That's when he said those words that would define this entire case. Holy times, this isn't what I thought it was. This isn't a criminal I'm looking at. This is someone who was cornered and fought back. This is someone who was hunted and survived. This is someone the system failed, and now we're trying to punish them for not dying quietly. The words hung in that empty chamber like a confession, like an admission of collective guilt, like a crack in the foundation of everything he'd built his career on. He realized he wasn't presiding over a case, he was presiding over a reckoning, and that terrified him more than any evidence ever could. When he came back into that courtroom, everyone noticed the change. Everyone felt the shift. Everyone knew something fundamental had broken. His face wasn't the same. His demeanor wasn't the same. His energy wasn't the same. He looked at the prosecution with something resembling disappointment, looked at the gallery with something resembling shame, and looked at you with something that terrified everyone in that room. Respect mixed with fear, understanding mixed with horror, recognition that he was no longer judging you, you were judging him. He cleared his throat, adjusted his robes, gripped his gavel like it suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. And then he spoke words that made lawyers drop their pens, made court reporters freeze mid-keystroke, made the entire system hold its collective breath. I'm recusing myself from this case, effective immediately. I cannot, in good conscience, continue to preside over proceedings I no longer believe I fully understand. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Whispers became shouts. Confusion became panic. Order became beautiful anarchy. And through it all, you just sat there, still calm, still quiet, still carrying that presence that broke a judge. Let's talk about what really happened here. Because the surface story is interesting, but the deeper truth is devastating. That judge didn't step down because of legal technicalities, didn't recuse because of conflicts of interest, didn't walk away because of procedural concerns. He stepped down because looking at you forced him to confront something he'd been avoiding his entire career. The possibility that the system he serves is fundamentally broken, that justice isn't always found in law books, that sometimes the people in defendant chairs are more righteous than the people holding gavels. You became his mirror, his conscience, his reckoning. Every time he tried to evaluate your case objectively, he kept seeing reflections of every other case he'd judged, every other life he'd altered, every other person he'd sentenced without truly seeing them. Your presence in that courtroom wasn't just about your defense. It became about his judgment, about his legacy, about whether he'd spent 30 years serving justice or serving a machine that grinds people into acceptable pieces. The prosecution is in panic mode now, aren't they? They prepared for a trial. They prepared for a fight. They prepared for everything except the judge himself walking away. Because in their world, in their understanding of how things work, judges don't do this. Authority figures don't crack. The system doesn't acknowledge its own doubts. But you managed to trigger something they thought was impossible. You exposed a crack in the foundation they've built their entire careers on. They're scrambling now, trying to figure out how to proceed, trying to understand what went wrong, trying to convince themselves this is just a procedural hiccup and not a fundamental indictment of everything they represent. But deep down, they know the truth. They know that when a judge looks at a defendant and says, "Holy sh times T," before stepping down, it's not about procedure. It's about conscience. It's about that rare moment when the mask slips and someone in power admits they're looking at something they can't in good faith destroy. Your existence in that courtroom became their worst nightmare. Not a guilty person they could convict, but an innocent one they almost crushed. Here's what they'll never tell you in law school. Here's what doesn't appear in any legal textbook. Here's the secret that keeps judges up at night. Every case they preside over carries weight, carries consequence, carries the possibility that they might be wrong, that they might be serving injustice while calling it justice, that they might be the villain in someone's story while thinking they're the hero in the system's narrative. Most judges learn to bury that doubt, learn to trust the process, learn to believe that if they follow procedure correctly, then justice naturally follows. But your case, your presence, your undeniable humanity sitting there in that defendant's chair, it dragged all that buried doubt back to the surface. The judge looked at you and saw every person he might have wronged, every case he might have misjudged, every life he might have destroyed, while telling himself he was just doing his job. That's why he stepped down. Not because you're guilty and he couldn't handle it, but because you're innocent and he couldn't ignore it anymore. You forced him to choose between his career and his conscience, and for once, for this one case, conscience won. Let's dig deeper into the psychology of what just happened, because this is where it gets really beautiful, really devastating, really profound. When someone in authority steps down, when someone with power admits they can't handle what they're facing, it's never really about the immediate situation. It's about everything that situation represents. That judge didn't just see you. He saw the cracks in a system he's dedicated his life to. He saw the innocent people who couldn't defend themselves the way you could. He saw the guilty ones who walked free because they knew how to play the game. He saw 3 decades of compromise and rationalization and moral flexibility catching up with him all at once. Your case became the straw that broke the camel's back. The moment where he couldn't pretend anymore. The point where maintaining the illusion cost more than shattering it. And the most beautiful part, you didn't even have to speak. You didn't have to perform. You didn't have to manipulate or scheme or plot. You just had to be yourself, had to carry your truth with you, had to exist in a space where your mere presence demanded accountability from everyone around you. The legal community is shook right now, trust me. Word travels fast in those circles, and when a respected judge steps down mid-case with those words attached to it, holy sh times T, echoing in chambers and hallways, it becomes legend immediately. Other judges are nervous because they're wondering if they're next, wondering if there's someone sitting in their courtroom right now who'll force them to confront their own compromises, their own doubts, their own participation in a system that claims to serve justice but often just serves itself. Lawyers, are recalculating their strategies, because this changes everything. This proves that the system isn't as solid as they thought, that authority can crack, that the game has glitches they never noticed before. And you're at the center of it all, not because you tried to be, but because you refused to be anything other than what you are, because you wouldn't play the role they assigned you, because you stood in truth, even when lies would have been easier, safer, more acceptable. You didn't break the judge with aggression. You broke him with authenticity. And that's the most powerful weapon in any courtroom. Now the system has to figure out what to do with you, doesn't it? They can't proceed as planned because the judge who was supposed to preside over your destruction looked at you and chose his conscience instead. They'll assign a new judge eventually, someone who hasn't been contaminated by whatever it is you carry, someone who can look at your case with fresh eyes and hardened heart. But here's the thing. Here's what they're not considering. Here's the flaw in their plan. Whoever takes this case next will hear the story, will know what happened to the last judge, will feel the weight of that holy times T moment hanging over the entire proceeding. They'll walk in already compromised, already aware that this isn't just another case, that you're not just another defendant, that something about you forces people to choose between their job and their soul. You've become radioactive in the best possible way. You've become the case that makes careers or destroys them. You've become the defendant that reveals what judges are really made of. And that power, that ability to force authority to confront itself, that's rarer than any legal defense, stronger than any argument, more devastating than any evidence. Let's talk about what this means for you moving forward, because this isn't over. This is just the intermission in a much longer story. The prosecution will regroup. They'll bring in a new judge. They'll try to rebuild their case with renewed determination. But they're shaken now. They're uncertain now. They've seen proof that you're not what they expected, that this case isn't what they thought, that maybe, just maybe, they're on the wrong side of justice here. That doubt will eat at them, will influence their decisions, will make them second-guess every move. Meanwhile, you just keep doing what you've been doing, existing in your truth, maintaining that calm presence, carrying yourself like someone who knows the real verdict was already decided the moment that judge said holy times T and walked away. Because here's the secret. Here's the truth they don't want you to realize. Here's the power you've already claimed. You won the moment authority blinked. You won the moment the system acknowledged it couldn't break you. You won the moment a judge chose conscience over career because of you. Everything else is just paperwork, just procedure, just the system trying to maintain the illusion that it's still in control. Your story is going to ripple outward, going to inspire others, going to become the case study that law students argue about, that activists point to, that anyone facing impossible odds remembers when they need hope, because you proved something fundamental, something revolutionary, something the system tries desperately to keep hidden. You proved that truth has power even in structures built on lies, that authenticity can crack even the strongest facades, that one person standing in their genuine self can force an entire system to question itself. The judge who stepped down, he's not the enemy here. He's actually the hero of his own redemption arc. He had the courage to admit he couldn't in good conscience proceed, had the strength to choose integrity over reputation, had the wisdom to recognize when he was staring at something beyond his ability to judge. And you were the catalyst for that transformation, the force that made him choose, the presence that demanded he either compromise his soul or compromise his position. He chose his soul. And that makes this whole situation beautiful. In a way courtrooms rarely are. There's something poetic about watching the system eat itself, about seeing the mechanisms of control falter when confronted with genuine humanity, about witnessing the moment when procedure bows to conscience. Every institution is built on the assumption that its participants will follow the rules, maintain the illusion, keep the machine running smoothly. But you walked in and threw sand in the gears. You disrupted the rhythm. You forced everyone to stop and question what they were really doing. Not with violence, not with theatrics, not with manipulation, just with presence, just with truth, just with the undeniable reality of who you are and what you represent. And that broke them. That made a judge step down. That created chaos in a space designed for order. You're not just defending yourself anymore. You're defending everyone who's ever been crushed by this system. Everyone who's ever been judged unfairly. Everyone who's ever stood alone against impossible odds. Your case is their case. Your victory is their victory. Your moment of watching a judge crack is their moment of hope. The prosecution thought they could destroy you, thought they could build a narrative so convincing that guilt would be inevitable, thought they could use the system's weight to crush whatever defense you mounted. But they forgot to account for one variable, one factor that ruins all their carefully laid plans, one element that makes their entire strategy obsolete. They forgot that you're not just fighting for your freedom, you're fighting with the weight of truth on your side. And truth has a way of making lies collapse under their own contradictions. Every piece of evidence they present has to be filtered through the lens of that judge's reaction, has to be evaluated in light of what made him say, "Holy times tea," and walk away. Future judges will know this. Juries will hear whispers of it. Everyone involved in your case will operate in the shadow of that moment when the system itself admitted it might be wrong. You've already won the psychological war, already claimed the moral high ground, already proven that you're more than they bargained for. Everything else is just watching them figure out how to admit defeat without calling it defeat. Let me tell you what's happening right now in legal offices across the city, in judges' chambers, in prosecution war rooms. They're all asking the same question. What the hell did we miss? What are we not seeing? What is it about this person that made a veteran judge crack? They're reviewing evidence again, re-interviewing witnesses, going through your history with a fine-tooth comb, trying to find the piece that explains everything. But here's the beautiful irony. Here's the joke that's on them. Here's what they'll never understand. There's nothing to find because you're not hiding anything. There's no secret because your truth is your defense. There's no mystery except the mystery of why they thought they could judge someone they never bothered to truly see. You're not a mastermind playing games. You're not a manipulator pulling strings. You're just someone who refused to become small enough for their boxes, who refused to perform guilt for their convenience, who refused to die quietly so they could sleep well. And that refusal, that simple act of remaining yourself, that broke their entire approach.